Okay, so StyleX is finally out. It's open source, it's made by Facebook, and it powers some of the most popular websites on the internet, like Facebook or Instagram or even WhatsApp. Some people call StyleX the Tailwind killer or the end of Tailwind. And one thing I really appreciate about StyleX is that it doesn't try to be either of those. As a common pattern in this video, you'll recognize that StyleX is not meant at all as a replacement for Tailwind. It has its very own ideas of how to properly style apps, how to scale your design system that has nothing to do with Tailwind. Now, there are things that are better than Tailwind in StyleX out of the box. We're gonna get to that in a bit. And there's also all the other stuff where it doesn't try to be like Tailwind at all, mainly the way you write StyleX. Let's use React as an example. Even though it's totally framework agnostic, you basically just define your component, you define your styles above that component, like some base styles we're gonna use for layouting with a flex property and whatnot, and a highlighted state that gives us a certain color for our text. We can then simply spread in the stylex.props all the styles that we want to apply to this certain div element. And that's a super important benefit over something like styled components, where every component then looks like a custom component, even though it's really not. In StyleX, we only apply the styles in our JSX. The actual HTML elements remain the same, which in my opinion makes the JSX much more readable compared to styled components, which we use at work. I don't like it. Now, enough theory, let's see what we actually just created on our web page. And just like that, right up here, our blue text shows up in our own kind of style system, if you want to call it that. And exactly that is one thing I don't really enjoy about StyleX. You see, if we look at something like the Tailwind colors that Tailwind provides to us, there's a whole design system baked into Tailwind CSS where beautiful colors that I use in designs that are not related to Tailwind at all, just because these look so good out of the box, are provided to us. In CSS or StyleX, because it is just a light abstraction on top of CSS, that is not the case, and you're supposed to build your completely own design system yourself. But that's not the full story. There's also things about StyleX that I enjoy more because they're more intuitive than in Tailwind. Let's say, for example, we had an alternative highlighted version of our text where the font size is the exact same. Let's leave it as 16, but the color, let's say, for example, is going to be red. Because this works in regular CSS, this will also work in StyleX. And just like that, let's merge this class name. Let's also apply the styles.alternative highlighted to our little p tag in here. And that works syntactically by just separating these with a comma. This is super straightforward. And just like that, we can see the text turned red because we set it to red. And the alternative highlighted, this is super important. This does not work in Tailwind, for example. The alternative highlighted here, the color red, overrides the color blue because it was defined later. We first apply the color blue and then we apply the color red in the alternative highlighted. If we take a look at this same implementation in regular Tailwind, we first apply a text blue 500 and then a text red 500, something really interesting is gonna happen. Of course, we're gonna get a little, linting complaint right here, but what you expect is for this text to be red because red comes after the blue, and after all, CSS is cascading. This works just fine, but if we take the text red 500 and put it before the text blue 500, now it should be the other way around, or text would be blue. However, if we save this, exactly nothing changes. And that is because the CSS file that is generated under the hood for us by Tailwind, you actually have no control over. And just this CSS file actually determines which color or text will be in the end. And since we have no control over it, we need an alternative solution because merging like this in Tailwind does not work out of the box, whereas in StyleX, it works exactly as we would expect, where we first define any style and then can override that at any point later on just by separating these with a comma. Let's get rid of all that and take a look at something called variants, because also in StyleX, these are way more intuitive. Now, variants are a super common CSS pattern that we can use, where we create a default style that will always be applied. For example, we always want this text to be white. That's why it's the default style up here. Then the blue variant will give it a background color of blue, and the red variant, of course, will give it a red background color. Now, using this variant could not be easier with StyleX, whereas with Tailwind, we would need an alternative solution once again, just like for the merging. In StyleX, we can simply spread in the StyleX.props, and now we're gonna do two things. First off, we're always gonna apply the variance.default for the default style, which is a white color. If we save that, it shows up right here. Beautiful. And now we can simply merge that with the variant that we want to use, which can be also dynamic. For example, the variance.blue, if we want that, which is going to give it a blue background color, or the red variant, if you want that. Of course, you can pass this in as a prop. You can save this as state, whatever you want. This is totally up to you. The point is the way in which we determine variants is super intuitive in StyleX. Whereas in Tailwind, there are things like third-party libraries, which we can use for this. Is that a deal breaker? No, I still like Tailwind a lot, in fact. But is it more complicated and less intuitive than by default in StyleX? I think it is. With StyleX, your HTML largely remains the same, just the styles are abstracted way above the component and tightly co-located and scoped to that component, which I really like. The reason I'll likely stay with Tailwind anyways is the great defaults it has, like the font sizes or the border radiuses and whatnot. They look great out of the box. You don't have so many options to choose from, whereas in plain CSS or StyleX, again, just a pretty light abstraction, I would say, on top of regular CSS, you are on your own, figure out what looks good. You can build your own design system and achieve that super consistent look across those projects. That is, by the way, the main reason they decided against a config file, so you can easily port it over to other apps and always achieve the exact same style, which I really appreciate. So again, it's not meant as a replacement for Tailwind. It never was. It's a totally own design approach, and I think that's awesome. Let me know what you think about it. CSS in JS, I know, is a controversial topic. Not everybody likes it. I use style components at work. I don't like that either, but maybe StyleX is different. Let me know what you think. I'm gonna see you in the next video. Have a good one, and bye-bye.